Morning, everyone, and great to see such a great audience. So, Mzila Mthenjane, I'm the CEO of the Minerals Council South Africa, taking over from Roger Baxter previously, just over 18 months ago. And I think the importance of this conversation for me and the importance of attracting young people, goes back to what we've always accepted as the reputation of the industry. Hasn't had a good reputation. But I think of lately, it really has, we continue to invest in the reputation of the industry, given, and despite the fact that we do have to operate mines in far-flung places where you wonder if God will ever reach you. But I think there's two changes that have taken place. Firstly, technology, and it's continued to change what mining is, what a mining engineer looks like, or a person who works in the mining industry. And then secondly, I think the shifting cultures as a result of the increasing gender diversity of the industry. And what those two things have done is certainly enabled even more women to participate. I think what then becomes relevant for this conversation and audience is that I think young people as well are certainly beginning to look at mining as an option. And why that is important for me is that where we are in the context of geopolitics, Africa, and the conversations that have been happening in the continent, it's actually a leadership call for action. Now, why that is important is that the way I've been reflecting on it is that it is forcing us to look at what is it that we have to make the change that we need to make. And one of those is what I have called, in terms of what South Africa has, are the Magnificent Seven attributes of South Africa. And a little bit of a story around that. If you've been following the technology industry, you'll be familiar with America's Magnificent Seven in terms of the 7 companies, the Teslas, Amazon, and so forth. But when you look at those, they're about the impact they're having on society, which is how I've translated that into what are the 7 things that I believe could impact South Africa and the continent going forward. And
I'll back you on these 107 if that's all right.
Absolutely, thank you.
And Themba 7 idea in terms of where the opportunities sit against that stormy context.
And I mean, it can be a little bit of a scary context that Mkwanazi has said, but I think we should certainly not approach it with any degree of fear, given the strength that we have in the Magnificent Seven. And the first one of those, I think, is what we've seen come out of our elections in terms of functional democracy. A place where you can come and be as a South African. In absolute terms, not only in relative terms compared to other countries. And then I think the second most important one, this is without any bias, is mining. And why mining? Because when you look at the topic, if you said geopolitics, Africa, and the real business of mining, in brackets, critical minerals, we are a country that has breadth and depth of mining in terms of skills and experience, but also what is emerging with mining is how it is giving rise to the enablement of infrastructure. So it's playing an absolutely critical role, which is why it will find itself in the midst of geopolitics. Mining is going to be critical to generate critical minerals required for us to transition into the future. But it's also at the same time enabling the construction of critical infrastructure that it will benefit from, but also that communities and the rest of South Africa will benefit from. And then just to list the rest, it will be agriculture and tourism. I think we're in a city which I believe 2025 it's the best city to be in the world. Our judicial system, and when you listen to many other businessmen who've traveled around the world, they tell you that South Africa is actually still the best place to operate, despite all our challenges. And then tertiary and research institutions. From a mining perspective, we have amongst the top mining schools, one of which is Wits, that I graduated from. And then financial and capital markets. It means that for all the needs from a growth and infrastructure, we've got a good base of capital markets which we can use to attract other financing. And I think those are the ones that I would list. And I think that's what we have as a leadership sitting here and out there as leverage to be able to compete effectively in this dynamic world.
Thank you. The year of democracy, simply because we saw so much change in leadership and elections all around the world. We talked a little bit about the need for stability, and a lot of that stability comes from great leadership. So, Mzila, maybe if I could come to you and ask your perspective on the necessary sort of types of leadership that we need to see to unlock inward investment and unlock that industrialization of Africa that we've talked about.
No, thank you very much for that. And I think it's a very important question, topic in the context of this conversation. And with reference to both personal leadership and organizational leadership, I think in being able to achieve a lot of what we're talking about here, because it is that combination that in the first instance will give rise to attraction of talent. And we started this conversation with the need to attract young people. And it's often said that, you know, when people leave an organization, they're leaving a boss and not a company. So I think that combination of what the leader, in his role, which is a privileged role, does to create the kind of organization that can attract talent, that can give that talent access to resources and information, because the leadership role combined between those two entities is really about how we use those resources and information to translate, you know, challenges to opportunities. And from a mining perspective, one of the things that was often made reference to during this conference is that Africa is very rich in terms of the minerals under the ground, but very poor in terms of the people above surface. So the big role of leadership, and which is why I said, you know, where we are today is the call for action, is about how, as leaders in the organizations that we create, are going to play the role of translating that mineral wealth beneath the surface of the ground into wealth that can be equitably shared and value that can be created in order to advance society. That's going to be the biggest challenge and opportunity, I think, for leadership in Africa. And this is without distinguishing between private sector and public sector. But this is where the kind of collaboration that you've seen with Operation Vulindlela 2.0 in South Africa, you know, is beginning to demonstrate the leadership that's required across those two sectors.
Thank you.